So let's talk about the 6 signs to look for early in a narcissistic relationships and why they can be so confusing to spot. So this is the question I get asked all the time. And I was recently asked it again, and I thought, okay, let's just hit this topic on YouTube again, because clearly everyone wants to know the answer to this. Now, I hate the red flags conversation. How can I detect this early conversation? Because it isn't quite that simple. Listen, if they were only an asshole early on and you were not empathic, then sure, maybe it would be easier to spot. But the back and forth between seductive and charming or vulnerable, and then mix in there your own empathy or your pity, means that you might even see these warning signs and still remain confused, or perhaps you grew up with these patterns, and so they're normalized. And you didn't really get the chance as a kid or an adolescent to ever be taught or learn that this stuff is unhealthy, or that their warning signs alternate with behaviors that actually feel really good and fill you with hope. So this identification of warning signs, it's subtle, and it can take so long to connect the dots on this stuff that by the time you really see it, you're in too deep. A year or even 2 has passed. Maybe you're engaged. Maybe you've moved in. Maybe you're expecting a child. Maybe you've moved for the job. And while a lot of this is most relevant to romantic relationships, it can be extended to friendships too. So these are the things, the six signs to look for. Number 1 is frustration tolerance. Watch how this person manages their frustration, disappointment, criticism, not getting their way, not being treated in the way they believe they deserve. A lot of narcissistic folks throw tantrums and grudges when they feel that they're not respected. And this can even be based on something that is such a small slight by someone else. For example, someone else forgets their name or may not ask them what they do for a living or whatever. Watch this for this pattern very carefully, because in narcissistic people, pretty early in the relationship, you will see them get angry, maybe hold a grudge, throw a tantrum, get really distant or cold. And if you were to try to comfort them, or heaven forbid suggest they're making too big a deal out of it, they will go after you and accuse you of taking sides against them and that you don't value them, blah, 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 whatever adult baby tantrum stuff they're going to engage in. So the question is, why do people miss this warning sign? Because first, you may actually feel sorry for them. For example, the narcissistic person may become frustrated because they planned a very special night for the two of you, and they reserved a special table with a special view that when you get to the restaurant isn't available. Another very nice table with the view is, but it's just not the one they want. So if you do question them and say, hey, it's fine, they'll hit back with, I just wanted to make this night special for you and for us. I wanted to do something special for you. And so now you feel guilty for being uncomfortable about their excessive reaction because they claim they were trying to make something special for you. You may also miss this because it's early days in the relationship. You may like so much about them other than this one tantrum. So you may just ignore it or file it in your brain under, let's not pay attention to that right now. Maybe it's not that big a deal. The big other thing to pay attention to in this area is how quickly they repair this mistake. Listen, if they quickly apologize and say, okay, listen, I overreacted. I'm sorry. I had no right to do that, and I am so, so sorry. Then you can be on a wait and see. But they can't just keep throwing tantrums and apologizing. That doesn't work either, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. For most of these so-called red flags or warning signs, you almost need like a strainer or a sieve, because the bad gunk and what feels like the good gunk get messed up together, and it's hard to separate them out. And I know this is hard, but this kind of tantrum reaction is unacceptable, especially if they take no accountability. Full stop. It is simply not okay. If one of these adult tantrums happens early enough, this is a big warning sign. Listen, I don't even know if that means that they're narcissistic, but it does mean they're dysregulated, and you are not signing up to be their trauma therapist. Number 2 warning sign is they talk over you or even put you down in nuanced ways that may even feel competitive. Another warning sign is when this conversation is not a back and forth, but again, feels like a long monologue, and usually a boring one. And even if you say something, they either splain, like mansplain, or they ignore it and they keep going, or they talk over you. It can be easy to write this over-talking and not being able to converse on their side to maybe they're just socially anxious. But if it happens a few times, that's a big sign. This may also escalate or co-occur with them subtly putting you down, like, you're a teacher? Must be nice to have those summers off and have your day end at 3 p.m. Or if they feel threatened. For example, let's say you have more education than them. They may say something like, all those fancy smart folks there where you work, and I bet not one of you knows how to fix something around the house when it breaks. Or it may be competitive. Well, I started going to Thailand before it became cool, after you say you just got back from a trip there. Again, most people write this off to just sort of social anxiety and getting to know you jitters. And I promise you though, if you were to try to directly address this with them, they would say, oh, come on, I was just joking. Can't you take a joke? Ugh, God, okay, I'll be robot person with you and always be so careful. So then they gaslight you. Again, no accountability always equals red flag. Or making it about your sensitivity when you try and point out this pattern, hoping it'll change. That's a gaslight plus a red flag. Not good. So why do people miss this pattern? Because when someone is talking over you, you justify. You may be socially anxious yourself, and you may figure that this is how their social anxiety shows up. You may already be used to this in other relationships, for example, with friends or family. You may even have a tendency to put yourself down, so you don't even notice this because they're putting you down, and so they're doing what's already being done. Because most people don't always know what a healthy conversation looks like, think about it this way. A healthy conversation is like a balanced game of catch. You throw the ball in good faith directly to them, and the other person catches it and throws it back. If the other person just holds on to the ball or runs away with the ball for a while before they throw it back, and then they throw it all kinds of wacky ways, that's not a game of catch. Same thing with a healthy conversation. You say something, the other person responds to what you said and may ask for more information about it. You respond, and then maybe even sort of bring them and ask them a little bit more of what they think about it. It's a dance. We are all so programmed to endure splainy, one-sided conversations till our eyes glaze over that we often miss this. The third warning sign is isolation and tests of loyalty. This is a big one and a potentially quite lethal one, and it can happen quite early and quite sneakily, and it can show up in different ways. They want to spend all their time with you, or at the very least expect you to spend all of your free time with them. If you do want to spend time with friends, they may in some cases ask to tag along, but more likely will say things like, oh no, really, you're going to spend time with them? I just want to spend every second with you. Now that I found you, I just want us to have as much time as we can, especially since I'm so busy with my work or you're so busy with your work. Can't you skip seeing them tonight? Come on. It's powerful stuff because that sense of being desired and wanted can actually be seductive and can even be related to old wounds, and you assume, I could see those friends another time. This new person may also throw things at you like, for example, it may be a friend's birthday party or other special occasion and that you were invited to, and your new partner says something about how, they're going through a tough time. They don't want to be home alone. And it feels like you're being made to make a choice that feels like some kind of loyalty test. And yes, in their eyes, there is a right answer. Even a compromise won't work. And they might even say, no, you go, it's okay. But even if you were to say, hey, listen, let me just go make an appearance early and I'll come home early, odds are no matter how this goes down, if you're not with them all night, you will get their anger and criticism and maybe even threats of abandonment if you do go. So for example, they may say something like, Remember, it's a new relationship. They'll say, hey, listen, I don't think I read you right. I was really looking for something committed and building a life together with someone, and I thought I saw that with you, but I think we have different priorities if you just want to be going out and partying with your friends. And see, the problem is if other parts of the relationship, since remember, again, it's early days in the relationship, are working for you, then this can feel like an impossible space, and you'll often not go to the party. As time goes on, you may even find this new person in your life criticizing your friends or family. Oh, your friends seem so immature. Your sister always seems to be putting you down. Your family doesn't respect me or like me. Listen, isolation isn't as black and white as that one day a person locks you in a room and doesn't let you out. It is a slow, gradual pulling you out of friendships that matter, and then you subsequently losing the support and perspective of people that matter to you, and that would be an important reality check. The narcissistic person does this in a million subtle ways. So why do we miss this warning sign? Because sadly, someone being obsessed and besotted with us in the early days of a relationship is often an ancient primal fantasy. It's the core of love stories and romance films. It's often a correction of childhood wounds, especially if you faced a consistent lack of attunement, childhood adversity, or narcissistic parents in childhood. We assume the friends will always be there, and they may be, if you're lucky, but by turning away from them, you lose out from the ever important support of these relationships, and some friendships may disappear. But in the day-to-day, you lose the validating voices, and before you know it, the narcissistic person becomes the only voice and the only reality. The other reason we miss it is we assume a new relationship means that we are kind of supposed to spend all of our time with this person. Intense, woo, exciting, don't do it. And if the new person demands it, that is a big warning sign. Number 4 warning sign, driving. I've talked about this on this channel before, and let's talk about it again. Research, over 30 studies have substantiated that narcissistic people are more dangerous, risky, and threatening drivers and have a greater likelihood of engaging in road rage. They'll come up fast on other cars. They dart in and out of traffic. They speed. They break traffic laws. They park where they're not supposed to park. They pull up to cars where they feel that they were disrespected and open the window and curse at them. And in some cases, this may even escalate to violence at, for example, a red light or them attempting to run someone off the road. Narcissistic drivers may even be cavalier enough to drive a car while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. When you take the entitlement, the arrogance, the low empathy, the selfishness, the grandiosity, and the dysregulation and the impulsivity, and move it to the wheel of a car, this is what you get. Are all bad drivers narcissistic? No, but it's a good bet. At the very least, they're irresponsible and impulsive. Many people in new relationships, and it's the first time you're driving with them, and they're this kind of driver, may even tell them, this driver, this new person, that the driving is scaring them or to slow down. And in some cases, the driver then might even drive even more scary or dismiss or laugh at your concerns. This is an enormous red flag, and it is one you can see early. You aren't driving school, and you aren't going to be the one to change their driving patterns. It is, in essence, their personality showing up at the wheel of a car, and that's dangerous. So why do we miss such an obvious warning sign? Because it feels too simplistic to people. They're like, what? Driving? Come on. That doesn't have anything to do with a personality. It actually has everything to do with personality. Driving is actually a high-demand, high-risk behavior. We assume it's not because it's so overlearned. We do it a lot, right? But we do it so much that we forget that it is actually quite dangerous and quite demanding. And when a person drives in a way that puts other people on the road at risk, for example, narcissistic folks love looking at their cell phones while they drive, but they can put themselves at risk, their passengers at risk. That is the embodiment of narcissism and antagonism. Sometimes we put it off to showing off. They're trying to show off, or they're having a good time, or they're showing how fast their car can go. I don't give a damn if they're a Formula One driver. If they drive like this on ordinary streets, this is literally a warning sign from the universe. Reconsider this relationship while it's early enough to get out. It can be hard enough to listen to this if this relationship has been a good time and fun and exciting, but this is a very clear warning sign. And when it goes bad, it could go really bad. Number 5 warning sign is they'll do the bad thing and then apologize. The apology fandango is an early sign in these relationships, and it's so easy to miss because it has to happen a few times. So this new person in a relationship with you does a bad thing. They're late. Maybe they do the things I'm talking about in this video. They say bad things about your friends. They drive in this dangerous way. They criticize you. They throw a tantrum. Then they turn around and give you what feels like a meaningful apology. Like, hey, I'm so sorry I said that about your friend. I know she means a lot to you. Or, I'm sorry I said that shit about you. I'm insecure. That's on me. Or they say, yeah, that was a bit extra last night with the driving. I was showing off. Like, ugh, that's my stuff. You think, oh, well, see, Dr. RAMANI, that's not a red flag. And if this happens once and they apologize like this and they take accountability and they don't do the behavior again, then great, you're right. That's actually not a warning sign. That's just the growing pains of a relationship. But if this is the cycle, that they do icky stuff repeatedly, then you have to sit with it, and then they apologize, and it happens again and again and again and again. Behave, apologize, behave, apologize, behave, apologize. If the behavior is not changing, it's just bad behavior and apology. That's not tenable. So why do we miss this as a warning sign? Because it feels like accountability. An apology, like that's the opposite of what we hear happens in these relationships. Listen, folks, accountability isn't worth anything unless there's also behavior change. Saying, yeah, I did that, and that wasn't the right thing to do, and then doing it again and apologizing it again, that wears thin. But you may feel that like, well, I read that narcissistic people don't apologize or take accountability, so maybe this isn't a red flag. Narcissistic people apologize all the time. It is often BS apologies like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or it is just doing what they want and then cleaning the mess up afterwards with an apology. An apology is not a mop. It is actually meant to be a making of amends, a taking of responsibility, and above all else, a changing of behavior. If they keep doing the same thing, that's usually them doing what works for them, then that's not an apology. But the apology, the mop, as it were, can trick you into missing the larger sign that their behavior, the warning sign that their behavior is not changing. Number 6 warning sign is that they go on a tear because they're upset about something and go bonkers, and then in a few hours or the next morning, they act as though nothing happened or tell you that their big messy tantrum is your fault. Now, this particular warning sign can actually show up early. Something doesn't go their way, or they don't like something you did and they lose it. And I mean lose it. They may scream, yell, maybe break things, maybe throw things, maybe they don't throw them at you, maybe they storm out and slam the door, but they lose it. You may actually be scared and think, oh damn, this is not good. And you see it as a warning sign. And then a few hours later, or maybe later that day, or the next morning, you see this person and they are literally calm, maybe even cheerful, and they act like nothing happened. Nothing. Calm, sweet even. And you feel as though you are now in another dimension. And when this first happens, you may question it and say, hey, about last night, what was that? And they will say, yeah, sorry, I was upset. I'm good now. It's not that big a deal. But they likely will not at any point reflect or empathize with how unsettling this was for you. If you push it and say to them, hey, what the hell? That scared me to death. I couldn't sleep last night. They will say to you, ugh, stop being so dramatic. I got a little angry, and I got angry because of what you did. So they blame you for their unsettling meltdown, which, by the way, is gaslighting. Their tantrum is how they regulate. The screaming and terrorizing you is how they release their tension. And once they release their tension, they are fine, and they don't care how it affects other people. But if you bring it up, you are the problem. The shame of folks who do this is that they do not want to be reminded of the ugly thing they do, right? So if you remind them, say, whoa, what was that tantrum? Then they will project their shame onto you. Now you're the problem. What's tough about this is that this new person in your life may act like not only did nothing happen, but they may actually start being really nice to you, which may lead you to not even want to talk about and perhaps sort of pretend it didn't happen. That's that good old betrayal blindness in action. So why do we miss this as a warning sign? Because in the early days of many narcissistic relationships, you may still want it to work. There's still enough good stuff. And when it's sort of, they make it disappear and act like everything is normal, and especially if they are nice to you, you may not want to talk about it or remind yourself about it. Again, this is analogous to that experience of betrayal blindness we've talked about, that not encoding in your mind that harmful experience. Because if you don't encode it, then you can stay attached. So if there are other feel good or feel seen things that are happening in this relationship, understandably, you may not want to blow it up and hold them accountable. In some cases, you may even wonder if you are exaggerating what happened in your mind. And if you grew up with a rageful parent, once again, this pattern might have been normalized. When you look at all these patterns together, they add up to you slowly blaming yourself, wondering if you are being too picky or too fussy or too critical or too demanding, too unrealistic. Maybe you are expecting this person to be too perfect. Nope. These are straight up warning signs, and most of these are likely to happen in the first year of an unhealthy relationship, especially a narcissistic relationship. The thing that is often more important than the signs is why we don't register these signs. And then how do we get better at seeing them? That's the question. Well, we do that by taking it slow, knowing what they are, allowing ourselves to pay attention to them, understanding our core wounds, talking it out with people who will validate and not gaslight your experience, and not viewing the good stuff as an eraser for the bad stuff. What I'm about to say sounds cynical, but the bad stuff is what deserves our attention in early days, because in the long term, that's the stuff that can make a relationship not only harmful, but difficult to get out of. When the good stuff happens with the bad stuff, again, don't let that good stuff be an eraser, but instead view it as an even greater warning sign, perhaps the ultimate warning sign, because that good stuff with the bad, when there's no accountability and no attempt for change, that good and bad, though, that's what makes warning signs so difficult to see. It's like a bright light in our face that blocks us from seeing clearly. And that good stuff with the bad, that sets the foundation of the trauma bond, which becomes embodied and slowly becomes our only reality. The key is to see it and not talk ourselves out of what we are seeing. And I know that that is not easy. But there's your warning signs. Everybody wants to know them. That's them. I wish I could say it was something easier or simpler, but those are pretty straightforward. Thanks again.